Andres D Alessandro from Adidas and Matthias Schulte, the CEO of Tradebyte. Give them a very warm hand. So thanks for being here. Talk about energy level. You're feeling good, comfortable, everything good, tired?
All good.
I'm surprised I still have a voice, but yeah, it's good.
You talked so much.
I've talked a lot today.
That's what the ECD is all about, right?
Fantastic.
So I provided some water maybe to get that
going. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so thank you for this. Before we enter the topic of what we call next level merchandise in that headline, of course, you also are welcome to introduce yourselves to the audience. I think, Matthias, you've been on stage, they know you, but anyway, please tell us, tell the audience what you do for a living. We know what you do, and what you do when you're not working. What is your most favorite thing to do, maybe?
Yeah, happy to do so. So hello again, Matthias, CEO, founder of Tradebyte. Yeah, actually still in the CEO position because I love it. I mean, it's just a ever-changing market. I always say also we have to kind of reinvent ourselves and kind of found a company every year, actually. So I'm eager to learn, and as long as I can learn, it's a good challenge in the end. And so this is an ongoing journey, I would say. Now we're coming to the more private question, right? So I didn't reveal that yet externally, only internally, but actually one of my favorites is to shop online fashion.
Surprise!
So if you look at the clothes in our family, basically I bought them, every item. I don't know if my wife really likes it, but so far it worked out pretty well.
She wears it occasionally. Okay, shopping online, that really brings you to a good position here to talk about
at least I learn a lot about user experience and shopping experience and checkout experience when doing so. So it's also helping for considering different shop and e-com situations. Yeah.
Andres.
Andres Alessandro. I am the Senior Director in Digital Partner Commerce for Partner Program at Adidas. I've been with the company for 11 years, which makes me a fossil by Adidas standards. Love what I do. Love being in the that's called the digital marketplace space. And I have the privilege of working with a very young and dynamic team who are constantly challenging me. So it's every day's a new day. On a personal note, what do I like to do in my free time? I am very, very boring. I really like to travel. Now that we're out of COVID, it's nice to be able to do it again. And I have a 1.5-year-old son that I absolutely love spending time with. Oh,
that's lovely. So, yeah, that's something. And it needs a lot of time. I mean,
and lack of sleep.
So in the short introduction, I was kind of making the statement that we just observed the last couple of years a heyday of e-commerce, as you wish. Everyone's rising curves and exponentially growing. Just breaking the ice a bit for the topic, can you tell us maybe that one thing that you observed in that period of time that you think that will prevail? What we learned out of that heyday times?
I think what we saw especially in the 2 years of lockdown or in between lockdowns and everything is just the level of newcomers into the e-commerce space of people buying online. That is there, that will prevail. That habit, I think, won't go away. It's just finding itself again now that we're back in an open world.
Matthias, have you something?
Yeah, it's a tricky question. So I don't know if it's already there, or if it's only a kind of a frequently discussed trend topic. But I guess that everything around personalization, which was discussed also in this phase where the increase in online volume was clearly seen. This is a kind of topic which is also for our business model of the future pretty relevant. So I think today we have on some areas in retail and platforms, we pretty have a selective thinking, which is actually coming from this, building a brand awareness and a certain user experience. And personalization will be the future king also to unlock a true marketplace model in the end. Mm-hmm. And so I think this will, I don't know if it stays, because you don't see that in a really rolled out phase already. So there are still tries and pilots and some bits and pieces. So we will see where it goes, but I guess this topic will be even more important in the future. How to deal maybe even with these newcomers, how to deal with them, how to deal with these loyalty customers, and in the end also from a retailer perspective, having a platform, how to deal with the long tail of SKUs assortment in a way that you still can deliver this user experience.
And newcomers could not only be new brands, or also new technical suppliers or innovators that bring up a solution for better personalization, because a lot of people took the time to invent or innovate new things, right?
I think newcomers can mean new consumers, new brands. It's never been easier to come to the industry, and it's also never been harder to get attention in the industry. I think Matthias brings up an excellent point, which is around personalization. And the thing that it made me think of immediately is you buy for your entire family. So how do you personalize for you?
Yeah.
How would a brand or a retailer personalize for you if clearly your intent is different depending on what you're buying?
They should ask me before.
Yeah, exactly.
Are you shopping for your wife again?
Is this for you? Is this for you? No, but it's an interesting one, because every consumer is going to be very, very different. And I think that's really also an underlying trend there, is like when you get all these people coming into the market, whether it be from the offering side, the supplier side, or the consumer side, you end up having completely different perspectives that didn't exist before. Some people want to be asked, what are you doing? Other people, don't follow me. Don't tell me what I want. I'm going to find it myself. So it's a really, really tricky question to answer.
Well, but that might trigger a panel on its own next time. We're talking about personalization, right? I want to dive into that area of direct-to-consumer business, D2C. I think that was part of that kind of leveraging the business to another level, that D2C consumer, the D2C business model. And I want to start this out with a rather controversial thesis. I think D2C has changed the digital commerce world, per se, but it's running out of fuel because investments going down. I read about that a lot. It's not that, you can have the money to do whatever you want phase anymore. Revenue has gone down for a lot of players. So would you agree that maybe there is a bit, we need new fuel, or is this a change again? What do you think about that?
Define D2C.
Yeah, we'll come to that later.
No, I don't agree.
Good, why?
I don't agree. Every single metric we see says the following. If you define D2C as brand or retailer direct to the consumer and not via any intermediary, not via marketplace or anything like that, then we will continue to see that accelerate. We'll continue to see that. Now, what we have to pay attention to is the relative size of D2C versus the rest of the market. And every single metric we see says the fastest growth will come from D2C. And we just had a panel on social commerce and the relevance of that. But the biggest absolute growth will come from the marketplace, the platforms, the partner.com, which if you go via a partner program is a different kind of D2C. And that growth will continue to exist.
Yeah. So I would agree. So I think it's, what we have seen with the players we follow is there was this certain kind of uplift, obviously, in demand during the times. We were facing lockdowns and people were not anymore, in the position to shop offline in a way. So there was obviously the shift from on a larger scale, from offline to online. And people kind of calculated and forecasted in terms of, okay, this uplift will then continue with the growth we have seen over years. But actually that you have a kind of, consolidation again, once, everything was open again, is a pretty normal effect. So what we have seen is that still we are, if you would go with this kind of plus X% every year, we are still on this kind of rising revenue trend. And it didn't go down, yeah. But you're right. Also, the D2C brands, which we have seen in the US, many of them being funded. This is also kind of regular approach that regarding certain trends, for example, offline to online, then investment money would go into this direction, and then once this is over, it goes out again. So I think it's a pretty usual thing which took place there.
Okay.
And I would agree that the D2C kind of over-proportionally will develop still in the future. And we also see the share of D2C rising with any brand who seriously is in the business.
Will continue, so this is what we agree upon. So speaking of which, you mentioned the definition of D2C, maybe, because maybe this is the time once for all to define what it really is, or if there are, I think there are many definitions circulating, and basically direct to consumer means, and it worked in medieval times, I produce a hammer and a fur, and you buy it from me without any middleman, yeah? Cut out the middleman, as you say. But there's also a definition of D2C via marketplaces. But maybe, I don't know, what is the real definition, and can we find one that defines it all, or do we have to divide that just to know what we're talking about here?
Oh, you want to hear it from me first? I was going to give it to you first, okay. Well, let's take your metaphor of medieval times, right? So you're a blacksmith, you produce a hammer, you sell it, someone walks into a shop, you sell it directly. That's D2C, yeah?
That's D2C.
The medieval equivalent of a marketplace model or a platform is there is a town square, you go set up your stand, and you sell to a partner. Now, in today's world, you pay a commission to your town square for that to happen. I think, at least from my perspective, you could call that D2C. It's a different kind, it's a different level of control, it's a different level of interaction. You can't show up to the town hall every single day, to the town square. You can't open up at whatever times, you have to follow certain rules, but you're still interacting with the consumer.
Do you?
Yeah, actually, I would look at D2C that, I mean, the control aspect, I think it's also a shift of accountability, responsibilities in the whole supply chain. I mean, we're talking today about merchandising, you know, because merchandising was actually with the retail, so with the middleman, yeah? And so this kind of middleman is now treated differently, and it's kind of not, it's downsized to a kind of platform player in terms of, okay, I do have a certain checkout, payment experience, whatever for the consumer, but everything related to the assortment is more or less in control of the connected brand. And so I would define D2C in terms of, okay, you have a minimum control around assortment, pricing, stock, yeah, how to deal with also the end of season pricing and so on. So everything of this responsibility is clearly shifted in the D2C model towards the vendor or brand side.
Okay, and this is a good thing because it helps the brands to either be in full control of the web shop, of course, of your own selling your hammer, and being in control of the marketplace. But is that really the case? Is there control? Because this is a discussion we've been having for years and years, and who's in charge, who's in control, who is steering the business, the brand or the marketplace, who's making the rules. Did that change maybe now? The brands in a better position than there was before?
I think brands in general have brands with a very strong own D2C channel, whether it be own retail or own .com, have a much stronger presence, and as a result have a bit more control over that ecosystem. Can you fully control the marketplace? No. There are mechanisms, and there are mechanisms that we use to be able to make sure that the relevant product is showing up in front of the relevant consumer on the relevant platform. But there's always going to be a certain level of gray or black market that you can't police the whole thing.
Because they want to be in control too, right? I mean, that's what a marketplace wants to do, doesn't, I mean...
Yeah, I think it's about certain guardrails in the end. And as you just mentioned, I mean, there are many of them, and you have to understand, again, from a vendor perspective, how to play. But the kind of independence you gain through D2C and the freedom to decide on certain selections, for example, or when to deal with hype drops, or all this kind of freedom you gain, you can utilize, yeah, for your brand awareness and also for your success in the end. Also to enter maybe also a new market, yeah, would be in the wholesale approach a completely different kind of entry barrier compared to D2C. So I think it's balancing out opportunity and limits, yeah, as Kai mentioned. It's kind of...
This is interesting because you mentioned new markets. So this is something I wanted to talk about next, because D2C is per definition a model that is based on growth, because you can easily go to new markets and grow your business. Internationally, assortment-wise, you can play with it in a way. Recently, that strategy seemed to have changed for some players to go into a more profitable than growth-orientated strategy. So does that mean now the high time of international growth is over and you focus more on that what you have? Or is that just a momentum because it's a difficult year and we will come back to that situation as it was before? What do you think about that?
I think there have been times, and I think we also, historically, we went through them where, brands dropped off a certain assortment with one unique pricing and kind of, consistent stock allocation and distribution across all channels, waited for orders, and, and then they came back and they didn't even know about maybe individual carry costs on a channel, on a channel level and so on. And I think this was kind of in times where also D2C was considered as rather it's kind of an incremental business to my own e-com. Yeah, but now, obviously, D2C steps into getting a share out of the wholesale business. And this is completely changing the game because, given the share of its size, in the end, you have to be in control of also profitability. But still, I would say, yes, we're talking about profit, but when we talk with partners, I think it's a triangle out of balancing growth, profit, and brand awareness. Yeah, so always kind of considering all angles and getting into the details on how to get to profit, but obviously also how to, for example, get out to new markets and to reach also incrementally again additional traffic. So it's still multiple considerations, I would say.
How do you look at that at Adidas? It's also, you play the whole game, right? You play wholesale, you have point of sales, you have D2C, you do basically everything, you name it, like every business model you've been through. And
I think Matthias put it really, really nicely, which is you constantly have to be balancing out your growth, your profitability, and your brand awareness. Mm-hmm. And if you ever skew in one particular direction, one of the others or the other two will be sacrificed as a result of that. You'll lose over time. So it's a constant balance of that. But to your original question, do I see internationalization as something that's going to go away? No, that's not going to go away. That's going to continue to be. You still see populations growing in different parts of the world. You still see economic development at very different rates. We were listening to a conversation earlier today about you talking about how CEE, so Central Eastern Europe, was growing faster than the DACH region. So again, very skewed perspectives. I think we may be in a year where everything's kind of being reset. And for sure, I think brands that were very skewed towards growth and brand now are definitely making that shift over to profitability because there's just capital's not as cheap and easily accessible as it was.
Mm-hmm. For Adidas, the internationalization or growth is not so easy because you are basically operating in every country that is existing, right?
Pretty much.
Where would you grow to? Yeah, that's interesting. So I think this is maybe to bring it to a point that is always the goal for a brand and the marketplace to grow, and that won't change, but it might be a bit more precautious at the moment. Is that something that we could align on, that generate more data, observe more, because there's a lot of things happening that might change the business?
I don't know if I would say it's going to be more precautious. I would say that it's probably less bets, but more meaningful ones. You won't see, let's attack everything, but you'll see, let's attack these three things, but let's really go after it with everything we have, and you'll see more focus on it.
Anything to add, Matthias?
Yeah, I would fully agree. I think I wouldn't even say it's more selective. I would say it's really more focused in the end. And then within the focus areas, you also have certain, let's say, requirements or things you need to have in place to be successful. So we also, we try to enable new retailers also getting to a certain feature level in terms of platform opportunities, because the experienced brands at least know, such as Adidas, that certain things won't work if you would just fail with a new channel opportunity. So we see it's no more pickiness and pushiness, I would say, in terms of how to get to a certain end-to-end experience or end-to-end opportunity, which changed over time, definitely. So this is what we have here now in this year's more frequently than 5 years ago. With the aim to have it in a place in a successful way for both, the brands and the retailers.
I want to come from that now to a bit more of a, not technical side, but the one thing that definitely changed in the last couple of years was the kind of the digital tool setup. We heard so much about data today. So BI tools and how to analyze what you're doing, and not being in the situation of starting a D2C business, just trial and error, but being in the next level of analyzing and really thinking about what you're doing. So, and also because the D2C share of the revenue, as we said before, rises and rises and rises. So there's a lot of pressure on that D2C units to really have a good set of data to have arguments for growth. So is that one way for the future to invest more in those tools, automatization, BI tools, to be prepared to have that assistance from algorithms to do your business? Or is it still the feeling of the seniors and management to say, no, we won't do that?
Yes. No, absolutely. I think, look, for sure, the nature of any trader, any marketer has changed over the last 5 years. And when anyone coming into the industry now has to have a certain level of data affinity. You have to be able to read it, you have to be able to understand it, you have to be able to ask questions about it. You may not have to necessarily build algorithms out of it, because that's what data scientists are there for, but there has to be a certain level of awareness to it. I think even more so, automation, standardization of processes will continue to be a big thing. It's definitely something we pay attention to, where we just need to be, it's not necessarily about being faster, but making sure that the time that we are dedicating to things is really value add.
Not faster, you said.
It's not, no, I said not necessarily.
Not necessarily faster, but in the end, I mean, it's also about speed and velocity in that business, to be the first one to do something based on best data-driven decision, maybe. That would help you to be upfront.
Apple is rarely the first, but they focus on nailing the execution. Right? So there are instances where you have to be the first. You really do need to be the first one with that technology, with that particular development. And being first doesn't necessarily mean you went through the process quicker. It meant you went through the process cleaner, and you got out to the result that you need to be. So I would stick by the statement saying it's not necessary that you go from 0 to 100 in 2.3 seconds, but more that you make it to 100 and you're able to maintain it. And if that takes you 4 seconds instead of 2, great. And
then the management board says, what about 120? And you have to do that too.
Well, that's the next step.
That's the next step. And Matthias, maybe to stay here for a while, data-driven decisions. We heard now that is undeniable important. But what is the impact maybe on trading and pricing, stock allocation? How could that help? And maybe compared to 3 or 4 years ago, what has changed here?
Yeah, I mean, internally we talk about a bit around that we also have to evolve from an integration proposition into a steering proposition. So how do we enable steering? And actually we divided it in 3 pillars, which are insights, everything around data visibility, secondly trading. Because also today, I mean, even though you have data, there's clearly no interplay into the processes which maybe influence pricing, stock allocation. So everything around how to take action out of data should be then within trading, also, for example, by setting up business rules and also by kind of executing actually on the insights you have. So this is a very kind of core area. And last but not least, we obviously now also we welcome within the marketplace business everything around performance marketing. And in the end, it's about, okay, how to optimize your listing. And this could be obviously for some platforms also organically working, so kind of SEO for marketplaces. So how to get better, how to improve the listing organically by improving content, well knowing what the specific mechanics look like at the channel. And secondly, everything around paid campaigns and sponsored products to improve listing. But also in there, we see the challenge coming up that you actually you have one budget and maybe you have to also distribute it over various channels and also kind of align it with your own activities coming from e-com. And so I think insights, trading, and marketing are the future fields to be covered. And to answer the questions regarding tools, yeah, there will be tools in the future. There will be coming a lot. So we are also pretty much engaged also via partnerships to kind of cover this different kind of spots of the value chain. And everything around processes, change management, also being in this steering position and sitting on the seat to decide on merchandising is also something. Yeah, what I mean, maybe Adidas is at a different pace and also looking at capabilities and capacities. But I would say, from a single brand perspective, to manage all this gets a challenge. Yeah? So it's also about what could I do and where should I, from a brand perspective, focus on.
Maybe coming to that brand perspective, and I want to stay there for a while, because so is it that you think that brands who don't use that, what I call the D2C playbook, like tools, setup, personalization, with all that we talked about, that's the new playbook, you have to do that. Disadvantage if you don't do this? Or is it still the situation, we had this social commerce panel today, when there is an influencer and there's a small brand doing a nice video in live shopping, they skyrocketing without any of those things, just happening like a band selling 1 million because they recorded something in the basement. Like, this is still happening, or is that over because you cannot compete anymore?
No, it still happens. You always have a certain level of viral, how do you call it, viral, just explosion in that kind of sense. I think that having all those tools increases the likelihood that you're going to be successful. And when you're a major brand, you need them. That's beyond a shadow of a doubt. When you're starting off, there's a lot that you can kind of hack your way through and get there. Because what you'll have, the difference between a major brand like ours and maybe a smaller brand is, in any major brand, the decision-making process, no matter how fast it is, it'll be longer because there's just more people involved. In a very small brand, the decision-making process will be very fast. So it's a trade-off, but at least I believe that it'll continue to happen. We'll still see those brands that pop up out of nowhere just because someone has a very good eye for something.
Good idea, or really that one product, that, I don't know, that color first that everyone...
Or perfect timing.
Yes, perfect timing. So I hope that these things are still happening, because it makes it interesting. So even maybe a major global brand like Adidas looks at those things and learns, why does that work? I mean, and incorporate this in a way, a design process or something. We had that discussion. So how could you make able, as a big brand, global operating, to incorporate really small designers being part of the value chain, or bringing in their designs, speaking of metaverse and all that stuff, right? So where you can really interact.
I would even go further. I would even say that it's not even necessarily about bringing just designers. It's just about bringing in something that is striking a nerve at that moment in society, right? So that can be a piece of art, that can be a piece of film, that can be, a particular movement that just kind of resonates with the world at that moment in time. How do you incorporate that into your merchandising strategy? Like
producing shoes out of ocean plastic, for example, like we did a couple of years ago.
We still do. Quite a few of them.
I wore that a couple of times, but now they're a couple of years old. I cannot wear them anymore. Yeah, that's great. So, I mean, we're coming closer to the end now, and we touched a lot of those topics that might be the ones to talk about in the future, and they define kind of the next level merchandising, as we call it. But maybe if you pick out one, each one of you, and we say that's really the important thing in the next 3 years, and that you really need to focus on, be it data analysis, be it personalization, be it whatever it is. So what would you put first? Maybe Matthias first. You have it.
That's a tricky question.
Yeah, sorry.
I mean, we just came, I mean, also our motto in Amsterdam was, it's colorful, yeah? I don't know who has seen that. Because it's such a fragmented space, yeah? So in many areas, I think you have to kind of invest in and get insights out and learn, and everything then together should, come together like a puzzle. So I don't know if there's really the one thing standing out. It could be data, but it could also be marketing. It could be also the way you know, now giving the share of D2C, how you treat your assortment sourcing side, which is also pretty relevant for everyone which we followed by over the years. So there are so many things to be considered, and it's rather how to deal with this complexity in the end, with this fragmented space, be it on the channel side, be it on the tool side, be it on the capability side, which you actually need to put it in place. Mm-hmm. So I would have a hard time to really choose one out of them to make them in the forefront.
Maybe decouple the complexity. That might be one. You know, you use all these tools, you need all that, but please don't let the consumer know. To make it as easy as possible, right? More than ever. Or does you, from an Adidas perspective, know what to put first in the D2C playbook for the future?
I mean, our strategy is pretty clear and been pretty consistent, and I agree with it wholeheartedly, is start with your consumer. Always, no matter what. It doesn't matter if you're going data, marketing, personalization, it doesn't matter. Start with the consumer first. Identify very clearly which consumer you want to be talking to, and focus on that. And then you can execute it from any different angle, but you're going to be at least communicating to your target audience. Okay,
so we put the word consumer in front or on top, a headline of the playbook, how to do merchandise in the future. That'll be it. I thank you so much for these insights. I think there's a lot to talk about after that. I'm happy to invite you to address the both experts with your questions. And thank you for listening. This is the closing down of the expert stage for today. And I want to end this with a major big applause for these guys, because that was really something. Thank you so much.
Thank you.